Well, welcome everyone. Thank you again we're about to get started. Hi everyone, again, my name is Ryan O'Malley, Ward 4 City Councilor. I'm also the current Council President. I am joined tonight by PAR Corp, our engineering staff on hand, Amy Archer, who's been really helpful in taking the feedback that we've received at prior public engagements and incorporating it into this plan. I do want to start by thanking the city and the administration, OSPCD, which is the Office of Housing and Community Development. We have our director in the audience tonight who could probably clarify what the exact acronym stands for. I want to thank the city councilors, particularly Councilor Spatafor and Councilor Crow, who have been great at organizing the businesses that will be potentially impacted and helping get some common sense, good compromises to the plan. I want to thank the public as well as the businesses for really providing the feedback in an honest and respectful manner. It's been really helpful to get to a better project. That has been very true with this and many other projects. So with that, I will start the presentation. It's not too long. Can everyone see all right? Is everyone having trouble seeing? Okay, great. And again, if you are online and you have any questions and you'd like to get into the queue, just raise your hand. If you're in person, you can just sign up at the sign-in sheet here. So we're going to take all the questions at the end, but we can always go back to the slides if anyone would like to see something clearer. So as an introduction, we're going to go over the introduction of the general project. We'll go over the project history, the design revisions that have been done over the last 5 or so public meetings that we've had. We'll open up discussion, and then we'll go over what some of the next steps are in terms of the timeline and what to expect. So the Spot Pond Brook is basically is the primary tributary of the Malden River. It starts in various locations. Obviously, it drains the Spot Pond, L Pond and Melrose, and it's also one of the main drainage areas for the entire west side of the city. It historically flowed through Malden up from Melrose and wound its way through Malden Center. It has it used to be really beautiful. There were parks along it that were designed by Olmsted. So what you see here is 2 postcards of Coytemore Park that used to have the brook going through it. Because of flooding, though, and a expanding city, it was culverted to prevent, and to allow more development in our community. So one of the benefits is you don't have as much flooding. One of the negative sides of that is you don't have as much of the open space or the nice walking trails that you might have had that naturally would have occurred along a brook. So here you see in 1897 some rather large drainage pipes being installed. In the distance you can see I think the Center Methodist Church. Where we would be approximately in the location of this building here. On the right, you can see the culvert, I believe at Clinton Street in the lower right, and then in the middle, that is actually Oak Grove train station. And you can see really in the distance a smokestack. That is the second Converse factory, which is still on Washington Street in Melrose. I think it might actually have a different name in Melrose, but it's pretty much Washington Street. So at some point within those last couple hundred years, 2 culverts were built. There is the original one, which is in yellow, that starts up by Winter Street by Oak Grove. The yellow shallow culvert, we call it, it pretty much just meandered the historic route, and it's still draining and collecting stormwater south of Winter Street. In probably the 50s or 60s, 70s, a deeper culvert was built, which is the green culvert, and that is very deep, and it's pretty much just a direct shot from that same location at Winter Street to the site of approximately Anthony's on Canal Street. Any of the water north of Winter Street is primarily draining through the deep culvert, and it pretty much bypasses Malden Center, which is where you get the benefit of the flood prevention. So we started this project way back in 2020 with a feasibility study. That feasibility study was funded through local grants through our CPC, and it was co-sponsored with Bike to the Sea and this DCR grant and myself. The thing that we were primarily looking at on the feasibility study, which was from 2020 to 2021, was, is it even possible to do this? Is there a way to build this? And we were primarily looking at what alignments would be used. And so some of the alignments that we looked at with the help of PAR and some other consultants were Main Street, Washington Street, and then looking at the historic drainage easement along the culvert. Based on the feedback that we received, I think we had maybe like 3 public meetings at that point, and they were very well attended. It was primarily online because it was during COVID. The priority and the public really wanted it to be along the historic route, which is what was selected. One of the reasons being is we didn't want to impact parking and traffic along Main Street and Washington Street. Main Street is a heavy business district. Washington Street can be really narrow in some locations and could eliminate parking. So we chose to go the path of least amount of conflict with those uses. In 2020, we started doing more conceptual designs with a second Mass Trails grant, and we had more public engagement meetings in the fall of 2020. And then that has kind of brought us to where we are now. In 2022, we had I think got to 25% design. And just so people understand very briefly, but in order to build something like this, when it has to do with engineering, you do a 25% conceptual design that basically is just saying, where is this going to go? What might it roughly look like? What side of the road is it going to be on? Is it going to use existing crosswalks? Are you going to need to add new crosswalks? Things like that. We got to 25% design in 2022, and in 2022, they took that 25% design, the City of Malden, and they were able to get us onto the state's Transportation Improvement Plan. It's called the TIP. TIP is how you build big infrastructure projects. Probably the most famous example that you'll know of now is the Green Line extension into West Medford. So this particular fund does like multi-billion-dollar projects. We are now on the tip there because we got to 25% design, and our project is looking to cost around $4.8 million. So when you compare that to the Green Line extension, the size of our project is like a rounding error. And the TIP does build in escalators every year because they know that construction gets more expensive. But the reason why I'm mentioning that now is based on the feedback that we heard from the businesses and the counselors and the public, we decided to, rather than continuing on with the 25% design that we had originally had, we brought it back up to have more public engagement, which is what has been happening from 2023 until even now. And we're looking to present the new design based on that feedback that we received. And I apologize for my long-windedness. I just want to make sure that everyone has the context. We have a question.
I just wanted to say, some folks online are saying that your presentation view is not showing on Teams.
Oh, thank you. We have a report that maybe our presentation is not showing on Teams. Do you know what they see?
It's showing the City of Malden window, not the slideshow window.
I'm going to try. for anyone who has live connection to the viewers online, or maybe I can.
They're saying UMA is showing it accurately, so that's a backup.
Okay. Sorry, y'all.
I'm not a Teams expert.
What other options do you have, Ryan?
How about now? It looks okay? Okay, so we're going to continue. I apologize. It is being recorded, and we have posted this slideshow on our website. So if you are able to search Spot Pond Brook Malden, it will bring you to a ClearGov website. We did post the presentation online ahead of time. So if we can go to the next slide. Sorry for the delay with that, but thank you for letting me know. I appreciate it. And so based on the feasibility study and the public engagement that we received, we are focusing on the red location here, which goes from Coytemore Park on the right, which is to the north, through the park, down Dartmouth Street by the post office, underneath the Florence Street Bridge, down Dartmouth towards where Hugh O'Neill's is, crossing Pleasant Street, going down Middlesex, crossing Exchange, continuing down Middlesex by the Central Business District Garage, crossing Route 60 using the existing crosswalk, going down Lower Middlesex by Walgreens and Stop and Shop. It's going to then go west on Charles Street. It'll be on, and then it will take a left going south on Canal and connect through to the path at the approximate location of the bike kitchen. And that's where we'll connect with the Northern Strand Trail. And now I'm going to hand it over to Amy Archer to talk more about the technical design of the path.
Thank you very much, Ryan. As Ryan mentioned on this screen, north is to the right. That will be true for all subsequent plans that you see, just to keep everyone oriented so you know what direction you're looking at. So to go over briefly the main objectives as we switched from feasibility to design, one of the elements was to try to keep some of the existing infrastructure. The feasibility study did take a look at the width of the right-of-way on each of these streets and considered what may be able to be constructed if we touched both sides of every roadway that the path was intended to go down. There is a huge cost differential to that. Every time we move a curb line, there is a lot of utility impacts between poles, underground elements like your sewer and your stormwater. So to try to make sure that the project didn't swell to an even larger number than what Ryan had quoted, we had worked through with city engineering that it made sense to hold one side of the road, to put the path on one side, work within the existing sidewalk and roadway space and not touch the other curb line. So what that typically gave us on most right-of-ways, or what we were attempting to accomplish, was the construction of an 11-foot shared use path that would replace one sidewalk. So the sidewalks today have a sidewalk on both sides. Sidewalk would remain on one side of the road, and the opposite sidewalk would be replaced with the shared use path. Widened to 11 feet. Where additional width was available, we're also putting a landscape buffer between that path and the roadway. We want to make sure that the path users, whether they're pedestrians, cyclists, both, that they have some buffer wherever we can fit that in. Parking lanes typically are going to be shown at 7 feet. You'll see that throughout the plan as I advance along the different roadways. Travel lanes vary. We did keep to what most of the roads are today, or we coordinated with the city and the DOT based on the type of the road, whether it's a collector or an arterial. Different widths are recommended for the lanes based on the type and the general volume of vehicle traffic that they carry. So that's kind of an overview of what we were looking to implement. We then took a separate look at each intersection. Tonight's presentation doesn't go into too much detail about the individual intersections, but we are working with the city to make sure that the crossings are safe, whether they happen at a mid-block or they happen at an intersection. We're trying to limit the number of legs of vehicular traffic that the pedestrians and cyclists need to cross. And we're putting in additional features if they make sense. So we did consider raised crosswalks, raised intersections, and to the extent that they are warranted. So what's on the screen now is an FHWA, Federal Highway Association, assessment that evaluates the volume on each road, the speed of vehicles on each road, and the lane configuration of the road to determine what the best crossing treatment is. So as we continue the design and as we advance our coordination and our review with the DOT, these are elements that will get incorporated at those crossings to make sure that each one has the safest movement and the least conflict. All right, so to walk through this now piece by piece, we're going to start on Canal Street. I think Ryan described this in the opposite order, but I tend to start at the south and head north. So we're going to start on Canal, we'll work our way up from the northern Strand. So at prior meetings, if anyone was able to come out and join us last summer, we had a few different meetings. We had a lot of feedback. The path was originally shown on the west side. There was a lot of opposition to that. There was a desire to have it on the east side. There was also a necessity to make sure that the properties along that east side have proper vehicle access. So we did a bit of what we call turning movements to make sure that different size vehicles, and we reached out to some of those commercial properties to determine the size of the vehicles, have access in and out, including the alley that kind of goes behind and over to New England Coffee. They have some of the largest vehicles coming down this road.
And just to clarify for everyone looking, the two images on the left are showing the view looking north, and looking north. Yep. So Anthony's is on the left, which is the west side, and New England Coffee and the other adjacent businesses are on the right, which is the east side.
Yes, thank you. So what we have put in once we assessed the need, so there was also a desire to keep parking on both sides of this road. We had done some parking review and didn't see a heavy use, but we were informed that there are uses during different times of the year, that there can be parking on both sides of the road, and there was an intent that the city may want to keep that. So what we're showing here is a 7-foot parking lane on each side, 10-foot lanes going each direction in the middle. We do eliminate parking in the stretches where those vehicles need to turn. So where the turning movements would be hindered by parking, we make sure that the parking is scaled back. But generally, parking would be permitted on both sides of the road. That left an 8-foot path. So this is a little bit narrower than the typical that we're striving for the project as a whole. But it is a vast improvement over what's there. The existing sidewalk in many areas is only 4 to 4.5 feet. And then there are utility poles and light poles within that that hinder the ability for particularly handicapped people to get around those obstacles. So this was a compromise of the space that's allocated within this roadway to fit the path. 8-foot minimum is commonly acceptable to DOT in areas where we have constraints. Ideally, they would like that at least 10 to even 11 foot as the standard. But we'll justify the constraints that we have here with the different movements and the vehicle uses. With this being on the east side of Canal, we only have to make one crossing at the intersection to get over to Charles Street. So we would just cross within the existing crosswalk that's actually there at the intersection of Canal and Charles within a protected cycle movement. So advancing along Charles Street. For anyone that was at the prior meetings, nothing has changed on Charles Street. This is still what we had presented. As the figure in the upper right calls out, the top image is looking west. So if you're looking at this, the Stop and Shop is on your right, New England Coffee would be to your left. So the left is the south side of the road. This is an area where there was enough room that we are able to put in the ideal recommended path. We have an existing vegetated buffer along the Stop and Shop parcel, along the entirety of the north side of Charles Street, even beyond that parcel. We are able to fit our 11-foot path and then put an additional 6-foot vegetated buffer between our path and the roadway. So this is kind of, if you will, the true greenway, where you're coming down on the path and there is vegetation on both sides of you. When we get to the intersection of Charles and Middlesex, we may have an opportunity to connect again to the northern strand. That is continuing to be worked out with the property owner on the south side of Charles there. But the primary path would continue north and move up Middlesex Street. So in the lower level of Middlesex Street, we were previously showing this on the west side. There was also an intent to switch it to the east side of the road based on the development that's happening over there. So what's shown here is looking north. We are holding 10-foot lanes for each of the travel lanes. We are keeping a full lane of parking on the east side of the road, which is what's permitted along Charles, parking along one side. The buffer here between the roadway and the path is a little bit narrower, but this allows us to utilize and maintain existing offsets to utilities and trees that exist along this corridor. So we're maintaining some of the great trees that are there, and we're gonna have less impact to the utilities than if we had put in a 6-foot buffer. So we're still getting that vegetation on each side of the greenway with less impact to other utilities and existing features. As we continue north, we're gonna cross Center. There's a little bit of a skew as we come through Center near the garage there, and then we continue up Middlesex, so you're still looking north. In this block, we are maintaining everything that's within the roadway. So we had heard at the last meeting that any loss of parking, particularly in this block near the garage, would be a pretty critical impact to some of the different uses. I think there's at least one, possibly 2 handicap spaces in this area as well that we didn't want to impact. So we've narrowed the area that we're utilizing for the path, and we're maintaining all of those functions of the roadway as it is today, so the businesses and the folks that go to those different uses are not affected.
And just to comment on that, that portion of Middlesex is adjacent to 350 Main Street, which has like a rehabilitation facility in there, which is one of the reasons why we wanted to maintain the ADA accessible parking within the shortest distance from that building.
So continuing north into the next area of Middlesex, at prior meetings, we had put together multiple options for this area, and we heard a lot of feedback that people did not have, there was concern about mixing pedestrian space, bicyclist space, and vehicle space. There was a lot of intent to keep vehicles separated from the rest of the users, so that's what we're moving forward with. We're advancing the design that puts the path on the west side of the road. So the 2 images on the left are looking in opposite directions. The one on the top is looking north, so the direction that you'd be traveling if you were going one way along that road. And then the bottom one is looking south towards the overpass. Well, it's not really an overpass, but the bridge over to the garage.
Yeah, so on the top one, Faces Brewery is on the left, and the ramp is on the right, where CVS used to be. On the bottom one, Faces is on the right, and the ramp is on the left. You're going to describe, so again, this particular area, Middlesex is not being closed. We're going to maintain the ability, we're not, so one of the things I think is good to highlight at this point, we are utilizing all existing crosswalks. We're not going to be changing any other crosswalks. We're going to be not removing any travel lanes. And you'll be allowed to continue to move through here and circulate through the downtown. The one thing here with this section is that there will be a mountable curb for when say there's a disabled vehicle and an emergency vehicle needs to get around them, they would be able to mount onto the path to get around a disabled vehicle. It also helps with turning motions of trucks if they do need to mount the path based on their turning radiuses. The other reason being is we did look at potentially removing the ramp, but at this point it's not feasible for us to remove the ramp, but potentially in the future we could, depending on redevelopment. But the other dynamic is that there is a overpass on Exchange Street, which can sometimes actually prevent trucks from exiting that direction, depending on how tall they are. So this section of road is necessary for trucks to egress from points on Exchange Street.
Yeah, so the mountable curb, as Ryan mentioned, came into play for two reasons. Primarily, it's emergency vehicles with just a 10-foot wide lane and no other lane adjacent to it since it's a one-way road. Fire and safety said that they would prefer a 17-foot area in case they need to go around someone. So if somebody stalls out right in that area, they may need to access it. And as Ryan mentioned, we did also hear that this is a common route of a lot of the service vehicles that make deliveries to the different businesses along here. So trying to make sure that they're still all accommodated in the manner that they are today. So as we continue north and get into the lower section of Dartmouth, this is another element where we had a couple options in previous meetings. Some of those, again, were mixing uses between vehicles and cyclists, and we're moving forward with the option that keeps those uses separate. So this, again, would have that mountable curb. We're keeping, so the image is looking north. We are keeping the sidewalk that exists on the east side of the road. We're able to fit an 11-foot lane on this one and then still have enough room for our typical 11-foot path. It gives us a buffer to the building. We do know that a couple of those buildings have doors that exit out onto the sidewalk, so we want to give some shy distance so people that are opening the door and walking out have some clear space. They can look left and right, make sure that bicyclists aren't coming before they move along the pathway.
And if I could just describe that image.
Yeah, sure.
That's, again, the image on the left is looking north on Dartmouth. On the left is Hugh O'Neill's, or ABCD. On the right is, it's like a professional building. I think it used to be the 99, for those that remember. And 480 Main Street, and the parking lot would continue up on the right.
So as we continue further north on Dartmouth, we do hit a short stretch coming near Florence and under Florence where we are able to put in, again, that typical ideal greenway where we get vegetation on both sides. As we start to approach the Y, we have to narrow out the vegetation between the road and the path, partially for visibility of users and the extent of people that are expected to be crossing here as well. So we are proposing, it may be a little bit small, but in the plan view, we're proposing to eliminate parking just adjacent to the crosswalk and apply a bump out so that pedestrians that currently use that crosswalk will have a shorter crosswalk and they'll be more visible to cars approaching. The path will replace the sidewalk and the bike lane that currently goes southbound along Dartmouth in this area. So the path is utilizing space already allocated to sidewalk and bike lane. Again, that crosswalk will be narrowed, and we were able to shift parking just a little bit before we transitioned the lane back at Mountain Ave, so there was no loss in the total number of parking spaces striped on Dartmouth in this area. So this image is looking north. The parking lot for the post office is on the left. The Y is that larger building shown on your right.
Yeah, and that's actually a good point. So there's no loss of parking in any segment. And actually, there is actually addition of parking based on the re-engineering that we've been able to do in some locations by making it more efficient. So we've lost no parking based on the feedback that we receive from the businesses and the counselors. So it's an example of, the tough feedback having an effect in making it a better project for everyone and all users.
So the final stretch as we cross Mountain Ave, we enter Coytemore Park. We're putting the path on the east side, coming around the east side of the pool property, continuing north along the field. So one of the things that we did in this area was tried to look at, one, retaining all the components of the monument that's at the southern end of the park adjacent to the pool, and then maintaining key trees. So we went through and we redid the alignment to make sure that we were to the east of the monument, and then we worked with the landscape architects at Tool Design to make sure that we identified the species of the trees within the park and made sure we weren't impacting any, particularly the large one. It's on the bottom right of this image. It's actually one of the northernmost ones in the park.
Yeah, and just as a full disclosure, I really worked them hard when it came to protecting the trees. I and some of the people in this room helped plant some of these trees, and so I was making sure that if it was a tree or the path, it's going to be the tree. I mean, it's going to be the path that has to move, and we're going to save the tree. So we have a little bit of a meandering here, and it's specifically to avoid the shade trees.
So that being the last section, we're just highlighting a couple of the amenities that we could implement along the path in some of those buffer spaces or in some pocket spaces that exist between the proposed path and some of the uses. A couple different seating options, more standard ones, more natural ones. We have different bike rack options. Wayside is kind of like a small parklet that exists at a trail entrance, if we can implement those at some of the intersections. Pleasant is one of the main areas that has available space where we can utilize that. And then plantings and stormwater management. So those buffers that I was talking about that separate the users along the path from the roadway also give us opportunities to collect and treat some of the drainage from the road. It helps with the vegetation. So it allows us to make the area a little bit greener and still treat the elements that are coming off of the roadway and the path itself. Generally, the project doesn't have any increase in impervious since we're taking either existing sidewalk or existing roadway pavement and turning it into the path. So it's kind of a wash on what's there, but this will help increase the elements of the greenway. So Ryan interjected a few of these points, but we certainly want to highlight as a whole some of the key things that we heard at the public meetings from last summer that we wanted to make sure were taken into account with the design as we advance it, revise the 25% and get it back in the DOT for review. There's no loss of parking along the length of the roadways within the project limits. There's no loss of travel lanes or vehicular movements compared to what exists today. We are implementing greenway space wherever we can to separate users from vehicular traffic. Even where we can't fit a wide enough space for vegetation, we're putting in small, either stamped concrete or brick areas for some separation between the two. And then park amenities preserved at Coytemore Lee. So at that point, we'd like to open it up.
Yeah, and I'm just going to, one more thing in terms about scheduling, and I just want to clarify this. So because of the hard work of OSPCD, as I mentioned earlier, we're on the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Plan. And we are slated at this point for federal fiscal year 2029. The federal fiscal year, like our fiscal year, starts actually in 2028. And just so people know, we're now looking at a revised 25% design that will eventually, after we have this community engagement meeting and after we talk to the Traffic Commission on Tuesday, May 20th, and after we have a couple more meetings, I hear there's going to be a meeting on May 28th, I believe. At that point, we submit it to MassDOT, our revised 25% design. They take it, they do their analysis, which takes up to like 3 months or more, and then it kickstarts a whole nother series of public engagement meetings. And the goal of those public engagement meetings are to get us to 75% design and then 100% design. Again, the 25% design is really thematic, and it's about, is it going to be on this side of the street or that side of the street? How wide is it going to be in different areas, and what are the potential impacts to abutters? So that's where we're kind of at in the schedule. And of course, if we are lucky and we get all of our ducks in a row, there's always a chance that we might get moved up in the schedule earlier. But at this point, we're slated for federal fiscal year 2029. So as was stated, I'll open it up to questions. We'll start in person. If you could just come up to the podium. Yeah, please. Do you want, so I'm going to recognize Councilor Crowe. If you can maybe come to the podium, or if you want to. Well, for the people online. Sorry. Okay, hold on. I'll turn you on. Want me to turn on your real? Oh, okay. I don't.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And I just wanted to say that I've gotten so much feedback from both sides of the aisle on what this all means. So each side really does have some really valid concerns, some perspectives. So I just really, as we ask questions and get some answers, sort of take into consideration what someone else might be thinking or how it impacts them. Just that respect, because I do think when we had some of the meetings before, it really wasn't someone was thinking about how somebody else is looking at it, how it's going to impact them. So I just want to make sure that we have that, because they, again, both have some great points, and I totally understand that. And now just speaking for the Ward 1 areas, I see tremendous opportunities, but also concerns at the same time. So, and how do we get to a spot that they can converge? Because there really is a difficult situation, because some things are really going to impact different people. Some of the businesses, I've heard a lot from the Canal Street, and I know that the turning radiuses, but when you're thinking about it, if you were a business owner on Canal Street and this could impact your business negatively, we want to take that into consideration. And so even for the businesses and the other people just that do not want this, take other things that are happening into consideration. So hopefully we have some respectful dialogue and can find a way that we can either figure out how we can work this together. Because I do have concerns, I have questions, and we'll keep it going.
That's a great point. Thank you, Councilor Crowe. Any questions online or in person? If you're online, can someone online try to raise their hand? I just want to see if the raising hand function is working. Okay, great. So yeah, if anyone has any questions online, cool. I'm gonna, and if you're in person, please just walk up. If you could sign your name on this, that little sign-in sheet, thank you. And then after that, I'm seeing people online, and we're gonna go in the order in which people raise their hand.
Ward 5.
So Janet Green, thank you. Continue.
Okay, I have a question. I was a little confused as to where it's going in I can't pronounce it, Coytemore Park. I'm just confused as to where it's going in the park.
Yes, so in this slide, the right side is north, that's Clifton Street. The left side is south, that's Mountain Ave. And you'll see the pool on the left, that's the DCR pool.
Okay.
The path is going on the east side of the park. It will be hugging the hill along the east side. It will be connecting with the existing path that is accessible, and it brings you to Clifton Street.
It brings you to what street?
Clifton.
Okay, so you're not just using the same path, that goes from Mountain to Clifton.
No. The existing path where you have the basketball court and the playgrounds is not being utilized, and it was decided that it would not be safe to use that because of the heavy children presence there, and we wanted to minimize any potential conflicts.
Right, so this is a totally different path.
Correct.
Okay, great. That's what I wanted to know, because I was thinking the same thing you just said. Because I walk there and I notice how heavily used it is when I walk in the park. So I wanted to make sure it was a separate path. So I agree wholeheartedly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and one of the things that we are looking at in the park is permeable asphalt or other types of surfaces, so that we are not displacing any potential flood storage and permeability.
I didn't think of that. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go online now. So I see Henry. I'm going to invite you to unmute. Henry, can you hear, are you able to speak? Well, when you, if you are able to turn your microphone on, I will call on you after I go to Lanny. Or Lonnie, I apologize.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, one second, we're gonna turn up your volume. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Hi. Hi, my name is Lonnie Nelson. I'm actually a Melrose resident, but I travel through Malden often and I'm down there a lot. And I just am here to say that I'm so excited that this project is moving forward. And I'm really glad that it seems like you're finding some compromises to accommodate the needs of different businesses and all of that. I just want to emphasize my perspective, which is people who are the vulnerable road users should be prioritized. So that would be people who are walking and biking and rolling and other ways on the sidewalk. And it seems like you're trying to do that to the best of your ability with the confines that you're dealing with. So I'm just saying, my point is thank you, and please keep this moving forward with those vulnerable users in mind.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else in person? And then we'll go, and then we're gonna go continue down the line.
EJ Taylor, Ward 6. I was just wondering about the terminus there on the north end coming out of the park, what that looks like, whether it's just kind of hard stopped at Clifton and the sidewalk, whether there's any potential room for expansion or just kind of what that terminus looks like.
Yeah, so on Clifton Street, it's gonna go to a crosswalk to the north side, but it's gonna stop there. It's just, it's lacking a crosswalk, and the only parking on Clifton Street is actually on the north side. So you often have families who are crossing, you know, in a particularly dangerous downhill area coming from Main Street. So we will be putting in a crosswalk, but at this point, the decision has been made to only focus on to the park and to the northern Strand. There are private property impacts north, and I think we do have a grant with some with Bike to the Sea and the Mystic Highlands Greenway, which is going to be like the larger initiative to add some signage to kind of get from Clifton Street to Winter Street, likely utilizing Washington Street or some other path. But at this point, this is the extent of the path.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you. I'm gonna go back to Henry. Henry, are you able to unmute and speak? If you can, feel free to interject whenever there's a break. I'm going to go to Brian McDonald. How are people raising their hands multiple times? Oh, it's in order. Oh, okay. Sorry, my apologies. Brian, are you able to unmute? We'll come back to Brian, and we're going to go to Janine. Which, I apologize, Janine. It looks like you were in spot number 1. I apologize. I was really confused about what those meant. I'm going to say if it's 3 for 3, it's probably me that's the problem. But Janine, if you or anyone else I've tried to call, I'm going to go to Allie now. Anyone? Anyone else in person?
I'm probably, I don't know if
I
anybody
just
else online.
You did it, Janine.
Okay, good, Janine, you're unmuted.
Hey, I just figured out how to unmute. I'm gonna tell people, it's not the little thing down by your your little icon. It's actually at the very top, if where you raise your hand. If you go to the far right, there's a mic there. That's where you have to click. You can't click on your little icon. You have to go to the top
That's a great point,
and go
Judy.
where the raised hand is and go to the right, just before the red leave button. There's the unmute there. All right. First off, I'd like to say thank you for taking everybody into consideration. I mean, the bicyclists, the walkers, but also the business people and the car people. When we can work together and find something that's a good compromise for everyone, I think that's the best win for everyone. When we all compromise a little and we'll all feel like we own this. I have to also say, I kind of like the meandering part. It gets kind of boring just to have an endless straight path. So when you have some little winding through a park, that's kind of more interesting for me. So I just wanted to say there, the thing about the park, I'm curious, what will be the grade? How steep will that be? Because I hate hills, you know?
And
And
hand that
then-
over to our engineer to answer that question.
Yeah, so it's probably a little hard to see, but the squiggly lines that are near the northern part in particular, those are grades. So we are making sure it's still ADA compliant. We are right near that 5% max that we're trying to maintain. So the northern part is a little bit steeper, and that's why it's partially meandering to go around the trees, but also partially to make up that grade differential and not exceed the ADA compliant grade.
And I have one last question, probably best for Ryan and I think you kind of answered it, but I just want to ask a little more. Is there any idea of having, I know that you ran into some problems with, abutters for going to Oak Grove, will there ever be a phase 2, potentially, to get to Oak Grove?
So the decision by the city has been to focus south of Clifton Street and to explore, some more on-street connections with other advocates with like signage. And we're looking at the option of potentially like Washington Street. The private property impacts at this point make it not viable north of Clifton. But if those private property impacts, change, then it could also change, but we're focusing south where there's not the private property impacts.
Oh, I thought there was a utility right away through there. Okay.
There are utility rights of way. I've learned a lot about easements and overburdening of easements, so I can't answer that question.
Okay. All right. Hopefully other people can unmute. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All the work you guys done. Thank you.
Thank you. Please. We have a person. No, please. You're next. Thank you. We're going to go to in person, and then we'll continue online.
Hi, everybody. I'm Susanna Cortez, and I have a question about this picture. Are you moving the World War II monument like on the original plan?
No.
Thank you.
And we never were going to move it. It was
going to be moved because it was said at the last, it was going to be moved a few feet over.
Yeah, just to clarify, the monument was never going to be moved. There's a small wall next to the monument that was going to potentially be moved, but we're not moving those anymore. We've been able to move the path.
I have a couple of questions. The first from my colleague, Mr. Barry, he wanted to know who's responsible to maintain the sidewalks should these extended sidewalks go. Right now, businesses are responsible to plow them or shovel. What happens when they're even wider?
That's a great point. So the northern strand is maintained by the city of Malden. And the plan would be for the city of Malden to put this on the same list. We have a small bobcat that goes on the bike path to clear in the winter, and it would be part of that route.
So the businesses would be free if they were not, they're not going to be responsible to cover that area if there's an extended sidewalk in front of it?
For the portions that are part of this, yes, absolutely.
Okay. There's a number of people who want to give feedback on this that were not able to join tonight. Who do they send it to?
Yeah, again, we're gonna have another meeting, on Tuesday, May 20th at 5 PM before the Traffic Commission. We're gonna give the same presentation again. We're not asking for any votes of the Traffic Commission. We just really want to have as many meetings as possible. If you have any questions, what I would say is you can absolutely send them to me, Councilor Crowe. I know Councilor Spatafora has also been very involved. We are the three internal stakeholders when it comes to this as the ward councilors, and he's at large.
It's mostly feedback, because it's difficult for people who are working to get here at 5:30, and the next one's at 5, and I think there's another one at 10. So it's 10 a.m., right? Right. So just so if people would like to offer feedback, they should email you and CC Peg and Councilor
Spatafora.
Spatafora.
Yeah,
Okay.
and also I'll reiterate that, again, there's another meeting being held on Canal Street, May 28th at 10 a.m., location to be determined?
Right.
The goal is sort of be on the corner of Charles and Canal, you know, where it kind of begins.
That's where the meeting would be? Okay.
So it sounds like it's going to be on the corner of Charles and Canal, outside, next to New England Coffee, unless weather dependent. And then in terms of my email address, romalley@cityofmalden.org.
Yep. Thank you. I do have another question. I feel very strongly about Canal Street. I do ride my bike. I see Councilor Winslow. I see you there. And however, Canal Street is an industrial street. It's not commercial. It's not residential, and it's industrial. And there's currently parking on the side of Spatafora. There is no parking currently on the side of, opposite side. And the reason being is that trucks cannot make the swing. And I know that you said there was going to be parking, but there is currently no parking, and it's an industrial street. For bike riders, just want to keep you all safe. I personally don't ride my bike on an industrial road because I know trucks do not stop, because if they have a big weight load behind them, they will not stop. And I love the bike path, use the bike path often, and I don't understand why we need a bike path and a bike road. I mean, you're basically cornering in the businesses that are there, and I'm not speaking for all businesses, I'm just speaking for my beloved business. And I don't understand why it's not connected where the former, the breakfast plate dockside, like there's a perfect spot right there where you could connect to the Strand, which is also a bike path and a bike lane in the street. Why are we having so many of these paths and roads when if you take 4 steps over, you're on a bike path, which I use, and I think it's lovely. Why are we making the street into a bike lane? And I also want to know, why are we spending all this money on a bike, additional bike lane, when you could simply allocate resources to fix the street and the sidewalk? You don't need to have you get money from the casino, there are other grants out there, it doesn't have to be a state one. If we were more modest, you could fix Canal Street, the sidewalk, as well as the street, and continue to keep the bike path with the bike kitchen, which I love the kitchen, thank you for being there. The red chairs, new chairs. I don't understand why it's a industrial street is actually being forced to accept this when there is a bike path. If you take 4 steps, I mean, I can take 4 steps and be on the bike path.
I heard a couple of questions. So from a funding perspective, this, aside from internal salaries in the time we spend on it, which are already sunk costs, it's costing the city no funds. We have grants for design. We got the Mass Trails grant. We've got a number of the Mass Trails grants. We have a gaming commission grant from the casino. and we are now on the transportation improvement plan. So local funds are not being utilized. Obviously, there are state and federal funds, so there's a trickle down. This is the one time it's trickling down. In terms of why here, we did look at other ways to connect to the Northern Strand. So coming down Middlesex by Walgreens, we looked at going straight over through the New England Coffee parking lot. It used to be a street that was a public right-of-way. We are hesitant to do any takings, so we're not looking to eminent domain any property. There is a chance that the establishment that is going in that location will voluntarily connect to the Strand themselves, but there's no proposal for us to include that as part of our project, and we don't plan on doing any takings. We did look at going, so again, coming down Middlesex with Walgreens on your left, Stop and Shop on your right. We looked at taking a left on Charles towards Main Street, but we did recognize that really is a tight area at that point with the turning lane on Main Street and some of the existing infrastructure there. So that was ruled out based on space limitations. And going to a right on Canal on Charles and a left on Canal was the really only other option left. And we thought that by including more of Canal Street in the project, we could help utilize some of the funds to do some of the ADA improvements on the east side that you were highlighting.
Even though the funds are coming from some of these grants, doesn't mean they should really be looked at. You shouldn't just take it because it's free money. We did pictures ourselves of what, how much of the street would be taken. There's a lot of trucks on this road. We have trucks that come on this road. I know you can't probably see it very well, but from the current, we measured what your proposal was from your stats there. It's not leaving a lot of space for businesses to use their trucks. And again, safety is our #1 priority here. We want everyone to be safe. I would love for the counselor to please consider avoiding an industrial road. And some of those businesses, for those of you who are new to Malden, maybe in Melrose, have been there for years. Families of generations and generations of the businesses there. And I do feel that this is very important to make sure that they continue to thrive and not have a problem, because you can't stop a big truck. Even when I'm coming out of 146 Canal Street, I have to inch out because of the way the buildings are set. You can't see the street, and if someone's riding their bike very quickly and you're pulling out, there is potential for collision, and then that would be unfortunate for everyone involved and hopefully not fatal. But thank you for your time. I appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you for the great feedback. All right, we're gonna see if Michael, can you unmute yourself?
Yep, you can hear me okay?
Yep, we can.
This is Michael By. I'm from Ward 3. I think along the lines of safety, I think Lonnie earlier talked about vulnerable road users, and then the woman just now was also talking about safety and the relation of the addition and how that could affect things. Do we have information or data on existing accidents in the region, whether it be car accidents, pedestrian or bike accidents, and maybe speculating or just thinking through with the additional path where that could help, where that might hurt, and overall whether it's a net benefit from that safety perspective?
Yeah, I was shared some crash data from MassDOT that showed that Main Street particularly has really high conflicts with cars, pedestrians, and bicyclists. So that's one of the reasons why Main Street was excluded, in addition to it being a busy commercial district. Putting it on Dartmouth, Middlesex, et cetera, had the lowest amount of conflicts when it came to that. Do you have any specific data when it comes to the crashes?
I don't have it at hand today. Some of the main areas we looked at for crash data was at the intersections. As I mentioned, we're trying to make sure that in the areas where we're looking at people crossing vehicular ways, that they're either at a signalized intersection with a protected movement, or that we're enhancing a crossing to make sure that they're safe and visible movements. I don't have that data on hand at the moment.
But in a related topic, and it kind of, I think, also helps address some of the comments that have been made, I think we have some diagrams of the turning radiuses on Canal Street, so we're going to bring those up just as that, I think, is natural between the conflicts that were just being mentioned as well as the prior speaker.
Yeah, and so one thing I did want to make sure was clear from the diagram, the path that we're proposing on Canal would not be in the roadway. It's one vehicle lane each direction, one parking lane on each side of the road, and then the path essentially is going to be a widened sidewalk with the turning movements that are needed. So they're in color here. You can see they start as blue vehicles. They kind of come through as orangish and greenish, looking at the front wheels and the rear wheels of the vehicle, turning in and out of the alley to New England Coffee, and then in and out of the repair parking lot to the south of that, north still being to the right of the screen. We made sure that the openings were sufficient for the clearances. We are not allowing parking on the corner on each side of those, so that way the parking is set back. There's more visibility for the vehicles approaching from each direction and for the path users. But the path essentially on this roadway is going to be a wider sidewalk. It's an 8-foot sidewalk. There are several sidewalks throughout the city that are at least that wide. So this is an area where I'm not sure if what you had sketched up was the previous plan from when we were presenting last summer, but we did put back more of the roadway width to make sure those truck turns are accommodated, and we've narrowed the accommodation for the path to be an 8-foot wide sidewalk improvement on the east side of the road.
And, you know, one of the feedbacks that we heard from businesses is that parking is important, so we tried to add parking where we could. But if what I'm hearing is the addition of parking might make it more difficult for trucks to turn, then we could always extend the areas that no parking is allowed. You're welcome if you'd like.
I guess my concern, thank you for showing me the diagram on the swing for the trucks. I just really strongly feel that trucks don't stop. Someone riding a bike, maybe fast, truck coming out, they don't stop if they have a big load behind them. That is the point that I'm concerned about. And that's why an industrial street should not be even thought about to have a bike lane when there's a bike path 4 steps from the street. I mean, literally, you could take your bike and walk from here to that, and you're on the bike path. It just logistically, it doesn't make sense. I get off my bike, I walk it when I need to, 4 steps, you're there. Again, it's the trucks having a load. If anyone in this room ever has a big pickup truck and you have a whole bunch of stuff in the back, you're not gonna stop. And I think the city should be responsible for anything that does happen if they continue to move forward. But thank you again, I appreciate it.
We appreciate your comments. Councilor Condon, Councilor Condon.
Yeah,
Councilor Winslow.
I'm really talking from my past experience as Councilor Large. I know one of the things you observe on Canal Street, 59 Green Street, which is in Ward 1, is a low and moderate income building. There's actually a lot of people with seniors and disabilities there. I was called as a Councilor at Large because people with disabilities were being forced to walk in Canal Street because the sidewalks couldn't be shoveled very easily or plowed by the businesses because of the poles. So it was really concerned for me that, and I would have to, have compliance go out there. The current situation for pedestrians, and the thing is that, it's not the trail. People from like 59 Green Street and the whole neighborhood sort of north of Medford Street are walking down Canal Street to get to the T station. So there's this line of desire. You notice by the bike kitchen, there's traditionally been a path. People come down, often between where Hoff Bakeries is, there's a fence. People come down, there are people walking down Canal Street to get to the MBTA station. So it's not just about bicyclists here. I mean, that, to me, that was something that I heard. I know Councilor Carreau, I mean, I think this is one thing that's very important to her, that to me, what's really, you know, there's the opportunity if the shop on Charles Street goes through, there's a direct connection for cyclists, but there's a need for a safer sidewalk on Canal Street. One of the things downtown, I mean, I've been involved in this stuff for 30 years. There's been people in wheelchairs killed in downtown because the sidewalks are inadequate and they've been hit by cars, I don't know if trucks, but they've been hit and killed over the past 20 or 30 years. So that is one of the real reasons that I, you know, though I totally understand in terms of the bike thing, but people who want to get from 59 Green Street and the Bell Rock area up to Stop and Shop, up to the MBTA station, come up Canal Street. I mean, it's a lot worse to actually to go on Commercial Street, which is even a heavier industrial area. So Canal Street's more safe. There's a lot less truck traffic. It's not as, the road's wider, it's not 4 lanes. It's the preferred way for pedestrians to get from the neighborhood. So it's really important to have that aspect. And the fact that, you know, I really appreciate the significant changes in the design that are trying to take into account and balance the needs here. So I think it's a great job. It's come a long way since the meetings we had last year. So this is a great event. But I really want to say that Canal Street, it's about as much about pedestrian safety and the line of desire for people to get up Canal Street to Stop and Shop to the station. And that's not going to change whether or not the trail goes through here or not. So I just want to make that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Winslow. Ally, if you want to try to unmute yourself.
Does it work now?
It is. Welcome.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I had it on the browser, and the browser wouldn't unmute, and I also couldn't see anything. But now I'm on the app on my phone. But anyways, I am Ally Durack from Ward 5. So I went around speaking. I really like this project, and I look forward to it being followed through. And I went around and spoke to some businesses to see how they felt about the project, because I understand there's a lot of concern about Malden businesses. Sometimes I feel like it's more than the residences, but I can see the conflict. I don't know. Anyways, there's a lot of weight on the businesses, and speaking with the owners, I've noticed some of them are a little shy about approaching the city on the topic because it's such a heated conversation. And I don't know if it's possible to be a bridge between the city and some of these owners, but I just wanted to open the opportunity for everybody to recognize some people aren't people, and they own businesses. But and then also I wanted to ask, I mean, this project's been going on since 2020, I believe, and stated on the flyer that community input is helpful for the rest of this process. And after thorough public feedback, the construction is slated for 2029. And I was hoping to ask how can my public feedback help get the construction done by 2029?
Well, I think
All done.
Yeah, no, I think just your feedback and you know, if you could be obviously how we interact and work with abutters is important, and so if you can help be that bridge to the businesses that you've talked to, you know, it would be super helpful as we move forward with this. But it is important to reiterate that, you know, this is one of many more meetings that will be done as we design more. Thank you. I see there are a couple of people. You both were. I just got up, so he's perfect. going in person, and then we're going to go to Janine, we're going to go to Kim and then Janine. And Jonah.
Hello, my name is Noah Took. I live here in Malden Center in Ward 4, and I actually work on Exchange Street, so this little section is kind of my whole world. And actually I'm, knock on wood, don't want to jinx anything, but actually planning to move just south towards Acorn Street. So the Northern Strand Trail is a key part of how I plan to bike to work every day, and this section of Canal Street is something I've been dreading. So when I was biking and I saw the poster about this meeting, I was very excited. I looked through the history of this plan, and going from sort of the last design to this design, my jaw dropped from that beautiful pedestrian and cyclist separated pathway to now with the extended sidewalk. It's really, a glorified sidewalk. I don't really think it's sufficient for cyclists, especially considering that this is, the plug from the Northern Strand into the heart of Malden, into Malden Center. I frequently am traveling along this corridor, and Canal Street is super unsafe right now. And I do think, my question is, one, is it too late? And I can tell there has been conflict, so I regret being so late in this process, but you only become aware of things at certain points in your life. Is there any potential to, I think you acknowledge that the parking is not utilized on Canal Street. The turn radiuses are being acknowledged. There will be no parking there. Is there any way to do more for pedestrians and cyclists along Canal Street? I would love to take another lane of parking away. I'm there all the time, and it's very underutilized. That road is very dangerous, and I think the specific point I'd like to make is we know that there's a very strong correlation between the width of a road and the speed that cars travel at. And an empty parking lane makes the road effectively wider and increases speed and increases the danger. And I know that, and I think that this extended sidewalk may not be sufficient for the volume, especially during beautiful days when people want to be using this path. And might force cyclists into the road, which I think might create unsafe conditions. So all that to say, as somebody who will every day be using this infrastructure, I am very sad that we have to wait so long. I also agree that anything we can do to speed this up would be great, but I know there's a lot of compromise, but is there any path or any consideration that, considering all the parking structures and lots around, that maybe we do yield more parking and find, I guess it doesn't feel like a compromise, it feels like a surrender in some ways, and I feel invigorated and want to fight because truly every day I will be biking along this corridor, and I want to be safe and I want to have space. So sorry, that was more of a comment than a question, but I'd appreciate, is there still room there?
Yeah, I appreciate your feedback. One of the biggest challenges that we faced is how do we make the connection? How do we help make Canal Street ADA accessible with the least amount of impact on the businesses? One of the compromises, to some of the area businesses was this parking. I'm hearing that maybe that's not the correct thing to do, so we can absolutely look at that. And again, it's not part of this project, but there are adjacent businesses along Charles Street that can on their own volition connect to the Northern Strand, and access over some of those other parcels on a voluntary basis could help create maybe a more direct and or greener greenway. But again, we are hesitant to do any eminent domain when it comes to that. And so this is the compromise that we came up with at this point. But there will be many more hearings, not just before us, but also MassDOT, who has to also review this. So no, I don't think it's the end all be all, but this is just where we're at now as we move forward and try not to lose potential funding. Thank you. I'm going to go to Jonah and then Kim and then Janine.
I was number one.
But Jean, you spoke once before, I apologize. We're just going to go to everyone who hasn't spoken, and then we'll loop back around to you. But I appreciate your patience.
Thanks, Janine. Sorry to make you wait. Thank you, Council President O'Malley. I think one of the things, so I'm Jonah Chiarenza, I'm the Executive Director of Bike to the Sea, and I'm really impressed with the work that you and your consultant team has done to address all the concerns about this project. The Northern Strand Trail was built over 30 years. I think if we can get this project done in 10 years, that'll be reasonable. Things are complicated. And I think you're doing a really good job of not rushing things and taking into consideration all the different players. I think it's important to acknowledge that, first of all, this is not a bike project. The Northern Strand Trail has a counter on it that gives us data on how many people are using it. Last year we had over 330,000 trips by the community gardens in Malden, and over 2/3 of those were walking trips. So the other third, less than a third, was people biking, but it was also people in wheelchairs, people pushing baby carriages, people on scooters. Anything metal basically gets counted as a bike. And I think the same is going to be true for this path. I think this is going to be primarily a walking route that's going to bring people from the Y and Coytemore Park down into the business district and further connect down to the T station and the bike trail. Well, there you go, the bike trail, the Northern Strand Trail, the 2/3 walking trail. I do think the connection on Middlesex Street is a great one to pursue, and I recognize that it's not necessarily part of this project and might be proceeding on a different timeline, but I think the steps the council has taken to work with the property owner on renegotiating their permit and to provide that access is really smart work on the city's part, and that'll be a really effective connection. And I do think, and I've sent emails to Councilor Crowe showing her images, which she doesn't need to see because she's seen it with her own eyes, of people in wheelchairs using the street on Canal Street to get up to Stop and Shop routinely, again, and not just people in wheelchairs, people pulling grocery carts, people pushing baby carriages, folks with disabilities. You can't walk side by side. You can't plow that side of the street. It's totally substandard, and it's actually illegal from a federal perspective to have a sidewalk, a public sidewalk that doesn't meet ADA requirements. So I think widening that side of the street in the form of a sidewalk makes a lot of sense. I'm also, frankly, I'm surprised and kind of shocked / impressed that you figured out how to add more parking to this project. That's pretty amazing. I think you've taken into consideration things like the need for ADA access to the physical therapy facility, the need for parking and loading for businesses, I think is something that can still be looked at. I know I had a conversation with the owner of Faces when the bike lane went in on Exchange Street. That made the turn radius difficult for their trucks bringing grain into the brewery, and so they now have to use the accessible parking spaces when they're free, if they're free. And their trucks are 14 feet tall and can't proceed onto Main Street because of the pedestrian bridge. They have to make that left turn on the Middlesex. These are solvable problems, and I think a parking and loading study, the last one was done 10 years ago by MAPC, would be a great complement to this to make sure businesses are being accommodated. Businesses change over time and their needs change. Having 30-minute parking spots, 15-minute parking spots, commercial loading zones, and making sure those are coordinated with the businesses to accommodate when it makes sense at different times of day for them is a great strategy to continue to sort of make sure this works for everybody, not just for people walking and biking. I will say the need for parking on both sides of Canal Street sort of surprised me, but I've learned that Anthony's, which is a much cherished business in town and hosts all kinds of events, does use that parking on the east side of the street when they have large events. That's my understanding. I wonder if some sort of solution in line with what the previous speaker said that could have some sort of mountable curb or a wider section for a more accommodating path that wouldn't put bikes and scooters and pedestrians in such close proximity on an 8-foot wide sidewalk, could also, on the few occasions when it's necessary, accommodate on-street parking for Anthony's, which again, that adds parking that's legally not there today. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. I think we can find ways that we use the flexibility of modern design and timing and coordination to make it work for everybody as it suits their needs. So thank you very much for a great project. I look forward to continuing to be part of the process.
Thank you for those great points. And yeah, and related to the phases loading, you know, that as we look into constructing this, that's something we would like to actually resolve. And I know that we also have our business development director, Kevin Duffy, in the room, who's been very helpful with reaching out to the businesses, and will also help advocate for that, as well as Alex Pratt, our OSPCD director, and our transportation planner, James Tarr. So we have a full contingent of the city staff that can help make that happen. So thank you for that. Gonna go to Kim and then Janine.
Oh, I think I'm in.
You are.
I want to really thank the last speaker for his thoughtful comments, and also thank the people who've worked on the plan. It's looking good, and I'm really glad that we're making progress. I am also sad that getting the federal funding means that we need to wait until 2029. And so I want to just push the political hot potato a little bit and say my understanding is that the purpose of this eventually is to be able to get to Oak Grove. And having lived on Parkview Terrace a long, long time ago, the way that we got to Oak Grove was to cut through that industrial area. And when I've spent time, I had my dog over there for a while, the number of people with strollers, with bikes, with canes walking through that industrial park as it is now to get to Oak Grove, where that industrial park has also become much more dangerous because they've changed their layout a little bit. My understanding is that this is not about private property owners' rights, but that it's city property that other people have been sitting on. I don't remember what the term is for that. Squatting. That's the word I'm thinking of. So it would be great, since we have to wait until 2029 for this part of the path. It'd be really great if we could simultaneously start working towards fixing the rest of it, instead of just saying that we're going to rely on things like Washington Street to get people who are, especially the walkers, who are they're not going to do that. And probably some of the bikers are just going to head down that other street, Clinton maybe it is, and go through the industrial park. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Kim. We're going to go to Janine and then Ben.
I'd just like to say, please don't put us over on Main Street. It's not 4 steps away. It's 100 feet through a busy intersection. It's 5 times more busy than Canal. It's right next to another intersection, and it's crowded there by businesses. It's not as open visually as being on Canal Street. So please don't put us over there. It's much better to widen the sidewalk. Again, we won't be in the street right now. Right now, I could ride my bike legitimately in Canal Street, but thankfully with this project, I can be up on a sidewalk safely removed from traffic. And to the best of my knowledge, when we do cross that area, we'll be at an intersection with a crosswalk. To the best of my knowledge, trucks are supposed to stop at red lights, and for pedestrians crossing at a crosswalk with a cross signal. So I think that would negate anything with the truck drivers, unless they're in the habit of not stopping at red lights. So it would be far superior to be on Canal Street. It's much less traffic than Main Street or Commercial Street. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ben. If you just joined us, your microphone button is in the upper right-hand corner near the red hang up button. And then while Ben is working on that, is there anyone else in the room who would like to come and speak? We're approaching the 2-hour mark, and I want to be respectful of people's time. Please. Oh, sorry, hour and a half time. I've been here since 5, I apologize.
Hello, my name is Gwen Loftman, Ward 4. I don't own a bike or a car. I'm a pedestrian, and I'm really excited to see the path continue along Charles Street there and provide a much more pleasant way to get to Stop and Shop. I feel like my quality of life decreases significantly the closer I get to Route 60 right now. So just having a nicer way to get to Super 88 on Commercial Street and to Stop and Shop is something I really appreciate.
Thank you for your comments. We have a couple more people in person, and then we'll try Ben again.
Hi, my name is Jack Took. I'm a Ward 4 resident, soon to be a Ward 1 resident. And I have to say I'm both very happy to see that this project is going forward, but I'm also I was very disappointed to see the sort of updated design after what we saw last summer. I think there's sort of a general understanding among everyone in this room and on the call that, you know, we can call this a path, we can call this a greenway, but it really is just a large sidewalk. And something that I'm concerned about is we've been talking a lot about just what we see here on the slide, just this portion of Malden. And I'm worried that in a matter of years, probably around the time, honestly, that this is being built, that it's not going to be sufficient. There's currently plans to build a bridge across the Mystic River, extending the Northern Strand Trail down from where it currently kind of makes that left to go over towards the Encore, extending that over the Mystic River into Assembly to eventually connect up with more bike paths in Somerville, and then I believe Boston's going to eventually redesign New Rutherford Ave and give you a better path down into across the new Washington Street Bridge into the city. And what I'm concerned about is in 10 years when we start building this path, and say in 12 years maybe when it's done, there is going to be more traffic coming up the Northern Strand Trail. There are going to be more people from Malden, from Melrose, from surrounding communities using that trail to maybe get to work in the city, maybe come out of the city to some business here. And I really am concerned that what is essentially a wide sidewalk is not going to be sufficient, especially when we're talking about a path that gets very heavy pedestrian use. Lots of pedestrians with lots of bikes, that's going to create conflict, especially on an 8-foot sidewalk on Canal, and then wider, 11 feet, up through the city. So I guess my question is, have we thought about that? How are we considering whether or not this path will sort of be able to rise to meet that moment? I also just sort of have 2 other comments. I apologize. I do think the connection directly from Middlesex onto the path, I do think that's a good idea just in the future. I do think we need to be realistic about when we talk about parking. We're talking about parking on Canal. You have, Anthony's has a huge parking lot. The Cambridge Health building there has a huge parking lot. We're also talking about, maintaining parking sort of all through the city. You have the CSB garage, you have the Jackson Street garage. Malden does not have a parking shortage. And so I don't feel, and maybe I'm outnumbered, but I don't feel that parking is in short supply. I don't see why that should be prioritized over safety for pedestrians and bikes. And I think that this is really important to sort of allow the path to be able to grow into maybe what it will be when future projects are done. So thank you.
Thank you. The compromise is challenging, and one of the things that we are trying to really understand, and I think it's important for everyone to understand, is that because it's a shared use path, the smaller the space that you have, the closer you have bikers to or bikes to pedestrians. And so there's a sweet spot there somewhere that we're still trying to figure out with the ward councilor and the at-large councilor and the businesses. And as you said, there are potential other connections that are not part of this project that might help alleviate some of that traffic, or that's not the word, usage. But I appreciate your comments. They're well placed. I can't remember, have we, Ben, we haven't heard from you, Ben, have we? Okay, well, Ben, if you can unmute yourself, you're welcome to speak. Anyone else in person that would like to come up and speak?
I'm Sean Bono. I live in Ward 1, and I want to reiterate that Canal Street has a very different use case than the Northern Strand. Telling me to just use the Northern Strand to get to the T, or like I used Canal Street to get to here today, would be about as useful as telling the commercial truck drivers to use Main Street instead of Canal Street. It turns, heads over to Main Street. It's not going to the same place. Being able to get to the actual train station or City Hall or the various other businesses that I do go to on the western side of Malden Center, Canal Street is going to make so much more sense than going all the way to Main Street and adding an extra mile round trip. Thanks.
Good evening, Bob Fitzpatrick from Ward 1. Sorry, I joined late. I was at the Sustainability Climate Action meeting, so I'm not going to opine on the specific aspects of the redesign, but I'm glad to see that we're pushing this forward. I, like the previous speaker, came here tonight on my bike on Canal Street. Canal Street is how I get to the T, to Malden Center. I feel that Canal Street seems to me to be wider than it needs to be for its current use, and so putting in additional bike infrastructure there, pedestrian infrastructure along Canal Street should, is utterly appropriate. I think, as Jonah said earlier, making the sidewalk usable on that side of the street, it'd be a tremendous improvement. Regardless of the rest of this terrific project, just improving pedestrian and bike access on Canal Street would be great. And it does go slightly differently from the Northern Strand, which I take every day as well. So I'm just encouraged by the project and encourage you to continue on, and we really appreciate the hard work.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your comments. We're going to check one more time for Ben. We're going to allow your microphone. We're rooting for you, Ben. Cannot unmute, but learned how to change the name to say not able to unmute, question mark. But you can submit your comments in writing, r.o'malley@cityofmalden.org. Again, this is one of many more public engagement meetings that we will have. I don't want to belabor anything. Is any last comments, or online or in person? I see we're joined by Councillor McDonald. Thank you for attending. With that, this presentation is posted online. We will be posting, reminders as these things go along. Again, this coming Tuesday, May 20th at 5 p.m., the Traffic Commission will be meeting. We're on the agenda. I'll be giving the same presentation again if you loved it so much and you want to hear it a second time. And then, Councillor Crowe and Councillor Spadafora will be hosting a morning meeting on May 28th at 10 a.m. I don't know if I'm invited, but I might crash it. So thank you all. I really appreciate all the comments across the board. Have a good night.
Thank you.